Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Silly, Why is Your Desk So Messy? Um, yeah, I'm just going to do a little overview of this 3D printed muzzle that I have for the Deuce Pro. This Deuce Pro is mostly disassembled right now, but you can see that this is the original barrel for the Deuce Pro, and it keeps the original barrel-y bit, whatever you want to call this bit, the equivalent to an end strike lug. However, it has a new 3D printed muzzle piece, as you can see there, and new 3D printed top rail, because the muzzle piece on the Deuce Pro is assembled in such a way where you can't replace just the muzzle. You can't just replace this bit. You need to replace the whole thing, which is weird, but that's just the way that they did it. So this 3D printed part, as you can see, it's currently 3 pieces, but I think later I'm going to update it to 1 piece. The last time I did active development on this was before I did a lot of the work on the slab, so I learned a lot of stuff with this slab development that I'm going to use to make this better. But this is the current, in air quote, version. As you can see, it's made out of 3 pieces. It's made out of this piece right here, which is printed like that on the build plate. And then there is this bit. This orange piece comes with the blaster by default. And then there are these 2 parts. There is this. It's very washed out on video. I apologize for that. But this part right here is one part. Then the rail itself is another part. And as you can see, there are 2 screws that hold it together. I had to go through a few versions to get to this place, so let's just go through that real quick. Let me just figure out which one's which. Alright, so this was the first version. It was assembled with 2 halves, like that, and then they were together like that to create the full kit and caboodle. Held together with 2 screws, one there and one there. So these were just 2 halves held together like that. They had little pegs here and here that grabbed onto the hole right there on this piece. So it'd kind of go in like that, right? Problem with the first version was hole spacing was wrong. That happens sometimes. No matter how accurate you take your measurements, there will still be some fine-tuning that you need to do. So this kind of roughly fits in there. I'll just use 1/2. It kind of roughly fits in there, but not very well. So this was V1, 2 halves, printed like that on the build plate. Then I did V2, which is assembled the same way. As you can see, there's still a screw in this one. So it's like that when it's assembled. These 2 bits hold on to this back piece. Like, I won't be able to show it to you without taking out that screw, but whatever. It's held on, and then these 2 bits, this all would go in here. On this one, the hole spacing is still a bit wonky, but it's the first one that could actually barely fit. So as you can see, that would sit there. And then this is a hole all the way through. On these versions, there's no backstop for the barrel, so it could just go all the way through if you wanted. As you can see, just goes all the way through. Doesn't matter in what position. The original muzzle has a stop in there. You can kind of see that ridge right there. That stops the barrel from going any further than that, which is something that you want to change if you want to use longer barrels. And you'll notice that these early prototypes don't have any top rail, because I just hadn't thought of a way to add that yet. Next version was version 3, which is this one. At this point, I had switched to 2 halves, like the original 2 versions, and then a muzzle piece, like this. And then inside the blaster, they would sit kind of like that, as you can see, kind of just butting up against each other. So if we assemble this, this bit would be like that, kind of just chilling out there in the blaster. And then this bit would sit on the back screw post, right there, and then just kind of chill there, like that. Now, this wasn't a very good connection because there's nothing connecting this piece to this piece, so it's just kind of floppy up there, which is no good. But it proved the concept of this piece printing flat like that on the build plate, which works really well. This is also the first version where I added these little greebles, which you can see right there, those little ridges, which are present on the original, right there, but not on the early versions. As you can see, that's just smooth. So once I knew that this basic concept would work, of these 2 bits being, this bit being printed vertically and then this bit being printed flat still, I switched to a new version, which is this. Ignore that this is a massive honker of a muzzle, as is this one, which we'll get to. These just work better with my barrel system that I have on the pump skewer and the silly pistol, where it's a little screw that you screw onto the end, a printed muzzle screw kind of. Actually, I happen to have a prototype of that sitting on the desk, but you could see that would just kind of screw on like that, and that holds the barrel in place with an O-ring in there. This wasn't the one that was in the kit, but it has the same threads, so whatever. But on this version, I made it so that this has a little tongue sticking out of it, and then this has a little recess right there, and those kind of go like that. As you can see, that mostly captures it, kinda. This back section is still 2 pieces with 2 screws holding them together. And then this is still 1 piece printed like that. Now, on the original muzzle, there's these 2 little pegs that hold on to the hole right here on the lug. On these, I don't have those because I found that they're really not necessary. All that back bit really needs to do is have these 2 little semicircles that sit in that cutout, kind of, and it needs to have walls there. These thin little walls right there and right there, just to keep it from wobbling back and forth. It doesn't really need the pegs. So that makes designing it a lot easier, as you can see there. Between this version and the current version, current in air quotes, I made that piece right there, 1 part, still printed on its side like that, so build plate being like that, and it's printed like that, with a support in there to keep those 2 walls there and there crisp, and then this top rail is a separate part printed flat like that, and then screwed on. And then this is also the first version where I actually printed the muzzle with SCAR rifling. And then that still has that little tongue there that keeps it together. Now I'm going to update this so it prints. Right now this part prints like this on the build plate like that, but I'm going to make it, preferably not chucking the parts off our desk, I'm going to make it all 1 part printed kind of like that, just like that. On the slab, I realized that you can make the faces of these Picatinny bits slanted, so they print vertically nicer. I can't print these vertically right now because they're mostly vertical lines. However, on the slab, which I just happen to have nearby, no I don't, that's an old version of the slab that doesn't have the Picatinny that I'm talking about. Does this slab have the version of the Picatinny that I'm talking about? Yes, it does. So you can see on the slab, I'm not sure if I'll be able to show it to you. Yes, you can see here that these are slanted. So this face right here on this part is slanted. And that's so it can be printed vertically. So I'm going to use that on this part. So it can be printed vertically, just like this. There might need to be supports because of these holes and this hole up here if it's printed vertically like that. But I think that that's a fine thing to have in return for it being one part and a much more solid part at that. I will also need to have this top section printed at 100% infill. This bit doesn't need to be printed at 100% infill to function, but I would be afraid of it snapping off of this other bit if it's not printed at high infill or high wall. But that's fine. So yeah, I think I'm going to update this to be one part, just like that. And that will also make it easier to have a version without Picatinny rail, like the early prototypes. Like that, where it's just a smooth top. Because that does have a nice look. It's just the rest of the design of this version with the smooth top just wasn't as nice. Oh, right. The bit that I need is the bit that I chucked on the floor. There we go. There we go. All right. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like with no Picatinny top rail. And just kind of cram this old version of the muzzle on there. Yeah, man. I know that's garbage. No, I'm going to use the next prototype, actually. I'm going to use this one. V4A. There we go. So that's the one where it has no tongue for those two bits. But you can see, once I have it together, that does look pretty nice without the top rail. It does look pretty snazzy without that top rail, with this all just smooth up here. But yeah. And I did match the greebling here, which is really hard to see because this is printed in yellow and it gets blown out by the camera. But the greebling is there, the little ridges. Shape's all there. It still has the kind of relief along this edge. So this is a smooth face here in between this orange lip right here and this yellow piece. It's smooth, flat across. Has a little inset there to fit that bit. But with the new version, it's going to be a lot nicer. And you can see on the current, in air quotes still, version, the fit is a lot nicer. As you can see, it's just like that. Preferably with actually having the barrel in it. There you go. Just like that. Yeah. So this has a built-in scar in it. This scar is not currently a sealed scar. There's no O-ring in there. However, it would be very easy to make it have an O-ring in there. And that is fitted for the stock barrel. And I made this to use in conjunction with a spring spacer that I have for the Deuce Pro. I don't think I'll be able to show it to you. Oh, I might be able to. Yeah, you can see in there. Let me grab a screwdriver to point with. You can see right... how am I going to line this up? There you go. You can see that kind of disc in there, right there. That is a spring spacer. That is not normally in the Deuce Pro. It's like this. So it has that kind of star cutout there for the plunger rod to go around. And then it just kind of sits there inside of the plunger head and acts as a little spacer for the spring. And that takes the spring from not reaching full compression to reaching full compression, which is very nice. And it gives it a lot more pop, which is very nice. And makes great use of the SCAR. Now, I am planning on releasing this for free when I'm done, but I am planning on setting up production of this as a mod kit with a shop, which will be pretty cool. But yeah, that's a small progress report on my Deuce Pro muzzle. Yeah. Bye.